Today, we're diving into a medical case that honestly sounds like something straight out of science fiction. It's a story where a device, one designed to save a life, becomes the very thing that threatens it.
I mean, think about it for a second. It's a pretty terrifying question, right? We put so much trust in medical technology to heal us. But what happens when one of those modern marvels of engineering becomes the source of the crisis itself?
And that is precisely where our story begins. We're in an emergency room with a 67-year-old man whose body is in absolute crisis. His temperature is soaring, it's dangerously high, and doctors are in a race against time to figure out why. So let's get into our first section, an unseen emergency. At first, the signs were pointing to something like a really bad urinary tract infection, but the doctors pretty quickly realized that something far, far more serious was hidden from view. Okay, so here's the patient's profile. He's got this raging fever, numbness in his leg, and his lab results are just screaming inflammation, especially his C-reactive protein, or CRP, which is a major red flag for a serious infection. But the real clue, the thing that made the doctors pause, was hiding in his medical history. 5 years ago, he'd had a synthetic endograft put in to repair a major artery. That little tube was supposed to be a permanent fix.
So now we move on to diagnosing the infection. The doctors, they're like detectives here. They had to connect his current symptoms to that surgery from years ago. They needed a smoking gun. And you know what? They found it, using some pretty advanced imaging.
Okay, take a look at this. This image right here tells the whole story. The scans picked up something that should never be inside the human body. Tiny air bubbles right around the graft. That is a massive red flag for a gas-producing bacterial infection. Then the PET CT scan totally sealed the deal. You see that bright glow? Wow, that's the infection just screaming on the scan. A hot spot of metabolic activity right where that endograft is. And there it was. The diagnosis was confirmed. An endograft infection. So what does that even mean? Well, it's when bacteria basically set up camp on the synthetic material of the graft, turning a life-saving implant into a ticking time bomb.
Now, this brings us to our next section, a surgeon's nightmare. For the medical team, getting this diagnosis is what's known in the field as the nightmare of cardiovascular surgeons. And let's break down exactly why this is so terrifying.
First off, check out this number, 0.7%. That's how rare this is. We're talking less than 1% of cases. This means when surgeons do actually run into it, the stakes are just astronomically high. The danger here, it's coming from all sides. The infection can explode into system-wide sepsis, or worse, cause a catastrophic, fatal bleed. And the bacteria themselves, they are tough opponents. They create something called a biofilm. Think of it like a slimy, invisible shield they build on the graft that makes them almost impossible to kill with antibiotics. And get this, it's usually not just one bad guy. It's a whole crew of them. These infections are often polymicrobial, meaning you've got a nasty mix of different pathogens. Now, gram-positive bacteria are the most common, but our patient had a gram-negative bug, Klebsiella. This variety makes treatment incredibly complicated. And if you need any more proof of how high the stakes are, just look at this number, 100%. That is the mortality rate if this infection creates a fistula, basically a hole between the aorta and the esophagus, and it's left untreated. The outcome is brutally simple. It's always fatal. There is absolutely zero room for error here. So what do you do when you're faced with this kind of devastating scenario? Well, the surgical team came up with a plan. A really bold, incredibly high-risk plan. Because they knew antibiotics alone, they weren't going to cut it. The source of the infection had to come out. Their 4-step battle plan was nothing short of audacious. Step 1, take out the entire infected endograft. Get the enemy out. Step 2, clean house. Meticulously remove every last bit of infected tissue. Step 3, harvest veins from the patient's own thighs. And finally, the most incredible part. Use those veins to build him a brand new aorta from scratch. Yep, you heard that right. Rebuilding an aorta. This wasn't just a simple repair job. This was biological reconstruction at the highest possible level. The surgeons basically became architects inside the human body. So here they are, the building blocks for the new aorta. What you're seeing is the result of surgeons painstakingly stitching together veins taken from the patient's own legs, crafting them into a replacement for the most important artery in his body. And here it is, the enemy removed. This is the infected endograft. The very same device that saved his life 5 years ago had to be surgically evicted to save him all over again. And this is the final result. The artery, reborn. You can see the new handcrafted vein graft expertly stitched into place, restoring critical blood flow. It is just a stunning feat of surgical skill. So you might be wondering, why go through that incredibly difficult process of harvesting the patient's own veins? Well, it's a real balancing act. You see, there are other options, like cryopreserved grafts or grafts bonded with antibiotics, but they all carry higher risks: reinfection, clotting, or even rupturing down the line. The patient's own tissue, what they call an autologous vein graft, is the gold standard because it's the most resistant to any future infection. So the surgery was a success, which is amazing. But this case really speaks to a larger reality in modern medicine, as we constantly find ourselves pushing the boundaries of what is even possible. And thankfully, the best news of all is that the outcome for our patient was positive. After 21 days, he was stable enough to be transferred to a rehab center, finally beginning that long road to a full recovery. There's a quote from the actual case report that just hits the nail on the head. It says the operation is physiologically demanding for both the patient and the surgical team. To put it simply, this kind of surgery pushes the absolute limits of everyone involved. And this whole case leaves us with a critical question, doesn't it? Every medical miracle we achieve, from synthetic arteries to advanced implants, seems to carry its own new and complex risks. So as our technology allows us to save more and more lives, the next great frontier really is mastering the consequences of our own ingenuity. Thanks for watching.